Ha ha ha! Look who is here. Look who is back. Look who's in the house today. Happy anniversary.
Hey man, I'm just smiling, man.
You just
just
got your butt
smiling,
in the
man.
chair. That's why. You just got your butt
Listen,
in the chair.
so good to be back, man. Man, we listen. I first of all, I just want to say, good to see your face in this place, and we just had an amazing Sabbath, man. So I'm coming back, and I'm just praising God for what He's done, Doc. I'm praising the Lord, man.
Praise Him, praise Him. Yeah, I'm so excited to be a part of this. We are now entering our 7th season of Pastors Roundtable. So congratulations, Pastor Paul, Pastor Henry. Thank you so much for the insight that God has given to y'all to even include me in this small little ministry. I'm just excited to be a part of Pastors Roundtable. And over the past I can't say 7 years, but over the past 3 years, we've had a number of seasons. We have had an opportunity to have some good conversations. And even up to today, I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And even here in Chattanooga, we have some fans. We have some fans who watch Pastors Roundtable. And when they saw me here at church, they were like, "Ooh, we're just so excited. We look forward to this 7th season."
Amen.
Yeah,
Praise the Lord.
I was sitting here thinking, it is terrible that we are in season 7, and I was still getting ready to say, "Man, can y'all hear me? Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?" I'm like, we've come this far, and I realized I had the wrong fader up on my mic, and it's just still.
My Lord.
Hey,
my
listen,
Lord.
but God is blessed, man. God is blessed. We've come all the way here, season 7. It's just been such an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to spend this time, not just with you, my co-host, but also with our audience, man.
That's right.
Our
Mhm.
audience, PRT family, has grown, and it's just been just a special thing to be able to see them in the chat week after week. We want to shout out some folk here and see who's here today. Barbara Bazil. Is this gonna work
Yes,
for us?
that's my
Say-
homie. That's my homie. Yes,
All
Barbara
right.
Brazil. I'm going to get a call later. I'm going to get that call later.
All right. Janet Lambert, good to have you with us. She's enjoying the music. We've got Myrna Harris.
Yes.
She is, what's this mean? Hand pink waving.
Waving.
What's that? All right. You have to break that down for
I
us.
don't know. She'll have to break that down for you.
Right.
And
All
then
right.
we have the one and the only, the PRT used to be alum and now part of the fam officially, Stephanie
Yes.
Scott.
Good to see
have
Stephanie here.
Let's tell
Yes.
us something about that. Let's let the audience know something about Stephanie, Roger. Talk to us, man.
So listen.
new.
Stephanie has been a fan from the get-go. She's a super fan, as some would say. But we were talking one day, and she says, "Hey, I wouldn't mind helping." She wanted to come and help, so she has joined the production team. She's one of our production assistants, and we're looking forward to seeing where, with her help, where we go. That's right. Where we go next. So we thank Stephanie for stepping up to the plate.
All
Right. Listen,
all right.
we appreciate Stephanie so much. And by the way, we're always expanding the PRT family. So many things to do. As we continue this ministry, and as Pastor Paul, Pastor Wade said, the 7th season. I mean, wow. I mean, we kept this thing up. Look, during COVID, we were doing it. After COVID, we're doing it. And ministry is happening. And we just want to expand this team even more so that we can continue to touch the lives of the people. So that may be a plug for somebody out there. I don't know. Somebody who has a gift that wants to come and be a part of what we're doing here.
Good stuff. Well, listen, gentlemen, let's not tarry. Let's invite. We need to invite our audience right now to do one thing. Dr. Henry, this is your thing. Tell them what do we need to do right now.
Listen, let me tell you something. Hopefully everyone ate already today, right? And when you ate, you shared some food. You know what I mean? You had the plate. I don't know what you ate today, but guess what?
My plate is sitting right over there on that chair.
Sitting right over there. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, me too. But listen, right now it's time to share this food that we're going to deliver today.
Yes.
This feed, what we're talking about today, about ministering to young, I don't want to say ministering to young adults, but we'll say that another time. But what we're talking about today is so critical to the lifeblood of the church to keep it going. So this is the time you want to share it, share it, share it. AY leaders, I guess they call it AYM now, share it. Youth leaders, share it. Conference leaders, share it. Pastors, share it. People in the pew, pathfinders, adventurers, you want to share it, because this program right here is going to be able to take the church to the next level as we minister to people in our community. So please share, 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 and then share.
That's good stuff. So, Doc Wade, talk to us, man. What is on the table today? What are we talking about today?
Well, listen, when we were planning and putting it together, we wanted to continue in the vein of connecting ministry to structure. We were excited about what God has done for us through season 6. Actually, all of our seasons, we have hit the nail on the head when we're talking about ministry and how it connects to the structure of the church. And so today we are actually talking about how do we minister to young adults, particularly on school campuses.
Wow.
We have a number of our young adults who are away at school, who are contemplating to go away to school. They're not sure how they're going to stay spiritually connected. This show is going to help you understanding how to do that through a ministry, through prayer, through support. And we have some very unique guests that are on today that's going to help us answer some of those questions. So if you know somebody who's preparing, a family, it could be the parent who's preparing to send their child off to school. It is graduation season. They need to see this show. Go on and share it with them right now.
This is a great topic, because I know a lot of parents, when they come to get ready to send their kids away to college, that people get afraid, because we talk about the idea that this is the time when they don't have the restraints of home, and when people, what they're going to do with their faith life really begins to develop. When they're not under the thumb or the control of a mom or a dad or a grandparent or whatever, and they're really free to do whatever now they choose to do to one degree or another. And so a lot of folk get really nervous. Is my child going to walk fully away from faith, lose faith, all of that. So this is a critical moment where stuff is revealed. So I'm very excited to hear this topic today. So that's what's on the table for today.
That's right. That's right.
Guys, tell us who is at the table this afternoon.
I could tell you about Pastor Kory Douglas. Pastor Kory Douglas has a powerful passion for ministry. He pastored in the Central States Conference. He served as the youth director for that conference. Then he went to Oakwood, and at Oakwood he serves as one of the chaplains, and they're doing an amazing work. He kind of oversees a lot of the youth ministries that are happening there at Oakwood University. In fact, they even took the program, the AYM, on the road. They took that on the road. And so there are a few places that they went. And he's getting people excited about ministry, preparing the young people, these young adults. Area there at Oakwood University, they will continue to do ministry. So that's Kory Douglas.
All right.
Awesome.
And Raj, who else do we got, Doc?
Well, listen, you are very familiar with one of the people we have, another person we have here. When you survey the land of who is making an impact in young adult ministry on the campuses in particular, there's no one like the two other guests we have. We have none other than the Don Keele Jr. He's the youth director. He's a young adult director for the Georgia Cumberland Conference here in the Southern Union. And we also have with him, he brought along one of his colleagues who is the on-campus minister for the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. They actually have a house called the Advent House on the campus of the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Pastor Chris May is with us. So we have Don Keele Jr., Pastor Chris May, and Pastor Kory Douglas, who is in the house today.
All right, now let's bring them on. Gentlemen, welcome. We are excited and delighted to have you all with us. I have to admit though, guys, I have a little, there's something, see, the one in the middle, that one in the middle there.
That one.
That was my Bible teacher, my youth group leader when I was in high school, when I was at Madison Academy. And I'm nervous, y'all. But here's where I feel good. I have control of his microphone. I can mute him if he wants to start digging up my history and my past and all. So I'm watching you, Don. I'm watching you. I got a button that I can. Okay, all right. But no, it is just a joy to have each and every one of you gentlemen with us. We're going to start with a word of prayer, and then we're going to give each of you just an opportunity to greet our audience for just a period of time to share maybe a little bit more about where you are and what you're doing than what we did in our little introduction. But Dr. Henry, would you lead us off, sir, with a word of prayer?
Let's pray. Father, every time you bring us to this platform, God, it's a blessing to talk about ministry in different aspects. And so today, as we talk about our youth ministry, God, I pray that your spirit will be with us. We'll have a lot of engagement and we'll learn a lot so that this ministry can continue to thrive. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Amen. All right. Well, we're going to start with Kory and just go right across. You guys, we're going to give you each, well, I'm not each. I'm going to have to do something special for Don. But Kory, we're going to give you 40.9 seconds to just go ahead and share with our audience today just a little bit about where you are, what you're doing. And Don, I'm going to give you about 5.2 seconds. But Chris, you can have all the time you want. No. Let's start with
man.
Kory.
It's a joy. Yes, sir. It's a joy to be on the show. Pastors Roundtable. My name is Kory Douglas. I'm one of the chaplains at Oakland University, senior associate chaplain. And as a chaplain, I basically resource the students for campus ministries, and we journey with the students. I want to make that an important distinction before we start this conversation. I'm not a pastor on the campus. Pastors proselytize. We journey with the students. All right. And so that's kind of my job on Oakwood's campus. We basically, I also teach on campus. So other than being a chaplain, I teach a couple classes on campus as well. 40 seconds.
All right. Go ahead, Chris.
I just go by Pastor Don. That's my time.
No, take your time, Don. Take your time. Just share with us where you are, what you're doing, all of that good stuff.
Everything collegiate and post-collegiate for the Georgia Cumberland Conference as ACF and Young Adult Ministries Director. And we are currently coordinating ministry on 15 different public university campuses, as well as I interface with Southern Adventist University.
Nice.
All right. Chris, talk to us, Doc.
Yeah, so once again, it's a privilege to be here. I thank you for adding me to the call. And right now I'm working at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. We have, like it was said earlier, a house called the Advent House that we run as a student center. I live on site with several students that rent out rooms here, but we have a number of students that are day students that come by and participate. The way I kind of summarize my job, because I wear a lot of hats, is, I see my students, they're kind of like the Justice League. They're the superheroes sharing the gospel in the laboratories, to professors, to the custodians in their dorms, to their roommates, places that I'll never go. And so they're the superheroes. And I see myself as like Alfred. I take care of the Wayne estate. And when they all come back beat up and they need to do a meeting, I got them. So I'm the butler of the Super League.
My Lord.
Love it.
Servant leader. Love it.
Absolutely.
Listen, guys, I am totally geeked just having this group here today. We're gonna jump right in because we know we have a full pregnant discussion that we're gonna have based on what we talked about last night in the little meet and greet. I'm looking forward to this. So Kory, you're gonna start us out with this with this answer. How would you and this for everyone, how would you describe the state of affairs in campus ministry today? Many of us, all of us have been through campus ministries in terms of when we were at school, but how would you describe the state of affairs in campus ministries today, and what is the lay of the land currently?
All right. Well, I'm glad I wasn't on the pre-production meeting, so you guys get this fresh, man. I'm gonna say it this way: it's not your mother's campus. I'm just gonna put it that way. It is not your
Wow.
mother's campus, man. Now, I have a unique perspective. Obviously, I'm on a Adventist university campus as opposed to UT, Chattanooga being a public university. And I'm just gonna say I'm pretty sure you can testify as well, man. College has changed, just as the world goes, college kind of goes. All the divisions and the the lines that you see out in the world, you kind of get on college. Last night at Oakwood, matter of fact, after AY, I kind of interceded in an argument between some really conservative students and some more liberal-minded students, man, as to where the worship was going. So it kind of runs the gamut. Not only that, but I would say, especially on the Adventist campus, it's not true for everybody, but I can speak for Oakwood and maybe some of our universities like Loma Linda or Advent Health University, Advent University. The demographics are changing. When I was at Oakwood, you could throw a stone and hit an Adventist, man. An 80-90% of the students on campus were Adventists. Now you've got maybe 60-40,
Oh, wow.
and that's
Wow.
that's Adventist in name. That's the numbers that are put in conference on their application. That's not even saying who's actually a practicing Christian Adventist actually trying to live it. So
Wow.
and then to give you more of an example, my second semester teaching, I had a Muslim student in my classroom. I've got at least 4, 5, 6 Sunday students. Even at Oakwood, we've got theology majors that are not Adventists, but they're studying theology at Oakwood.
Wow.
So the campuses are changing. The students are wanting, and the
Wow.
students are wanting a experience to change with the thing. They're pushing the envelope. So. And so I'll say this, and maybe I'll come back around to it. And so for me, especially when I'm teaching my classes, I like to start every class clean slate. I don't assume anything about anybody. I ask them questions. First couple classes, who in here is a believer? Who in here believes in God? Who believes in Jesus? Is he your savior? What does that mean to you? Who
That's
believes in the
fascinating.
Bible? Do you believe in all of it? Some of it? And if you've got issues with the Bible, what are those issues? And we kind of laid the groundwork. I don't assume that, that everybody's on the same page, because the landscape is changing. It's definitely changing. And then in terms of the lay of the land, campus ministries is a huge opportunity. If you watch any huge debate between any, political, on no matter what side of the aisle you're on, they take their arguments to college campuses, because that's where the crop is ripe. That's where if you can influence them, you've got an entire generation, and they know it, and so that's kind of where they invest their resources. So, that's kind of the lay, man. It's not your mother's campus, and the fields,
Wow.
it's a major crop, and the fields are wide open.
Listen,
Wow,
Kory,
wow.
Kory, listen, you're blowing my mind. By the way,
Yeah.
I like your logo in the back. I just have to make sure. I just moved to where I am, man, so I need to put some stuff in. But that's amazing, because when we went to Oakwood, Pastor Paul and Pastor Douglas and Roger Witt, man, every theology major, I can't think of one theology major that wasn't Advent. But you're saying now there are. I just have a question. When you dialogue with them, what made them come to Oakwood to study theology?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. There's some where, it's the closest theology program to where they live. You got a couple that've got some relation to an Adventist, an aunt or uncle's Adventist or something like that. And, they know they want to be a pastor. And if you go to Oakwood, what is it? It's kind of our mantra, man, the school of the prophets, is where the preachers come from. So even for those people who have, Sunday relatives, who want to be pastors, they're still like, look, man, if you want to preach, you need to go to Oakwood.
Wow.
At least
Wow.
your preaching will be substantive, or will have
My
some
Lord,
substance.
my Lord.
That's fascinating. I got one more follow-up for you too, Kory. You mentioned, I'm just curious, you mentioned that you kind of was interceding or refereeing a debate, a conservative and liberal stuff about how worship was going. So that was in a religious sense. I'm curious, are we seeing on our campuses the same type of conservative and liberal discussions when it comes to more politics?
Oh yeah,
and,
sure.
and the culture wars type thing. Are we seeing that on our campuses as well?
Yeah, I think it's a yes and a no. On one hand, whatever you get in the world, you get on campus. Obviously, the reality is Oakwood is a HBCU, And so most of the students are going to tend to learn, to lean to the blue side of the aisle, or however you want to say that. But you'd be surprised, man. Not everybody on the campus it would consider themselves Democrat or liberal. So those
Okay.
conversations do it too.
So
It's not as
there's
it's
some red
not maybe
hats
as
on campus.
intense as in other places, man. But it definitely exists. Whatever's being debated in society is debated being debated on our college campus.
Pastor
So
Paul, you
I'll
better
walk
watch that
into
question, Pastor
conversations
Paul. Watch it, watch it.
Okay. All
about
right. All
women
right.
preachers and who should do this and what. I mean, all those conversations exist on our campus, man. You'd be surprised.
Awesome.
Good.
Wow. Don, you want to jump in on that question? What are you seeing as the state of affairs in campus ministries today?
I was going to defer to Chris first, since he lives with the students,
Okay.
and just let Chris answer that, and then I'll throw some stuff in.
Yeah. So, well, I'll start by saying that I think a good summary of campus ministry life right now is the work is plentiful and the workers are few. We have a lot of resources and we do a lot of stuff here, especially at the UTK chapter. But I mean, UT has like 30,000 students. I mean, if you put that as its own city in Tennessee, that would be a whole city of just people between the ages of like 18 and 22, which is insane to think about. These are the people I'm trying to witness to. So there's always a need for more people. I think someone once asked me, they're like, hey, how's the competition between the Adventist clubs and the other denominations? And I was like, well, I'll tell you, the collaboration is great. Because anyone who's willing to help me share about Jesus, I'll take their help. So, it's really nice to be on a campus like UT's where it's a public school, but they actually acknowledge the need for, like, the faculty acknowledge the need for campus ministers. So they have a council here where they've actually have people like myself who are full-time staff members from all different denominations, all different faiths, come together and they give us honorary staff membership and faculty privileges. So I get to be I know, right? It's such a privilege. And they not only give us that, but they also reach out to us as a council and they'll talk about, sometimes I think once we had two political speakers from different parties coming on the same day, and they have a history of getting some rowdy crowds on campus in other places they've gone. So to have both of them at the same time, they were like, hey, campus ministers, can you guys do something to promote unity and grace and just address social issues? And we're like, oh, when do you want this? They're like, yeah, I don't know, by the end of the week. And we're like, oh, okay. But the fact that they're calling upon ministers to help bring that Christ-like attitude to their campus is just really awesome to see from secular people. On top of that, just seeing our students also step up in their climates to do what they can for their friends, it's really empowering to see. And like it was said before, the things that affect this world, they affect students too. I think it's important to remember, though, that on top of all that stuff that is stressing us out is adults also, they're also stressed out with school and what they're going to do for the future and their finances because, they're in debt without a job, a lot of them. So they just have a lot of added stresses on top of the normal stresses that they have. But that's kind of how I would summarize how things are going in my neck of the woods, at least.
All right. Don, you want to sew that up?
Yeah, I think that I would echo what Kory says. As far as Southern's campus is concerned, you get a lot of the same exact things going on there. I know that Southern does every year an assessment of all students, and they're kind of tracking from where are you, because you can't assume anything anymore. And I think he rightly said that. You can't assume that just because you're coming to an Adventist college or university that you're an Adventist. And so they have an assessment that takes you all the way from I don't even believe in God all the way through I'm a true following disciple. And so they're trying to map where students are in the process of that in that particular aspect. And then on the other side of the fence, we've got about 60% of our kids now in public universities. And for various reasons, and we might as well shoot these out to start with. We have always assumed, well, they must be just wanting to run from the Lord, and that's not the case. There are some students, obviously, that probably do want to run from the Lord, but or they just don't have enough money to afford Adventist education, and that's partly. Yeah, but there are a lot of students on our public university campuses that I interface with that are there because their major isn't offered on any Adventist university campus. Aerospace engineering, for example, we don't do too well with that. We had one student for his doctoral program, his PhD. He needed to have a nuclear reactor. We don't have a lot of those around Adventist universities.
Okay.
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. He was there at UTK, and Chris knows him well. And he actually went to Oak Ridge. They had a symbiotic relationship with Oak Ridge, and he was able to use the nuclear reactor to actually prove his thesis or his dissertation. And so there are a lot of reasons, any number of reasons, why Adventist students would go to public university campus. And so I think the church is now acknowledging that and realizing that, we need to also be where they're going, not just, and I advocate Adventist education. I grew up in an educator's household. My dad was principal and then education director for a conference and then for two different unions. And so I resonate Adventist education all the way through, but I also recognize that we're in a different world. And not all the students are going to go there. And so if they're not going to get there, you've got to go where they are.
Do you feel that the church is doing, I know you said that we need to go where they are, but are we doing enough to support campus ministries, particularly on public campuses or even on the Adventist campuses? Because it's a different world when you work for the conference and you work for the educational side of our church. It's like you cross over into a different country. Do you feel that we as a church is doing enough to support it, or even recognize that it's an important arm of the mission? Or even if it is it part of the church's mission to minister to the campuses, whether public or Adventist? Anyone can answer. Jump in.
I think that we're making some gains there, but I don't think that we're doing enough because obviously we're still here. Point being, though, I think that there are so many churches that are close to public university campuses that just refuse to see them as an opportunity. And so we don't want to shake up our church service, and we don't want to have to make any accommodations. And so to get public university students here, get Adventist students from public university campus to even do anything to recognize that they're here is too much of a burden. And so unfortunately, a lot of our churches that are close to those university campuses don't see that as a mission field for themselves.
Which is obvious, because if they're already Adventists, the likelihood of you baptizing them with those funds and growing your church is slim to none. And then also they're transient. I have not worked on a public university campus, but I've passed it in some towns, where that's the case. And I mean, it's pulling teeth trying to get money to do stuff on campus, when the reality is that's the biggest field. And I think we do things backwards. Not that we should do things for tithe dollars, but the reality is, no matter where these students land in the church, they're going to be in. The idea is to keep them plugged in so that wherever they go, they will continue to be plugged in. So like for us, we talk about taking AY on the road. Part of the reason we do that is so that not only the local church can get a taste of what we do at Oakwood, but also so the student can understand that not every church is Oakwood. Like especially our theology majors, when they're standing on that stage or they're in all these programs and they're preaching, they get this idea that, well, everywhere I go is going to be like this. Like, no, my friend, statistics says the average church is 50 to 75 people. And your choir at your church might be the best choir in town and not be the best choir. You know what I'm saying? And so you got to get used to.
I like that.
Figure out ways to kind of plug the students in, man.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, this idea of having these ministries on campus and also having it at these other universities, trying to create that atmosphere where our young adults can get involved. is a powerful thing, especially in these other campuses. I know here in Florida, we had a big type of campus ministry that was going on, where they, just took over, man. They had their ministry at these public campuses here, man, and they got the local church involved. I remember up in Gainesville, Pastor Paul, I think it's in Gainesville,
Yeah,
where they had campus ministries, right? And
that's
they
right. Yeah.
connected with the local university there, and they got that local church involved. My question to you is, how can, especially in your case there in Tennessee, um, how can we get the local churches involved? How can we get them to, be involved in what's happening on the campus? What are some things that we can do to let the local church know that this is a mission field that we need to um, be a part of? May, specifically talking to May, what are some things that we can do?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I think the first step in that is talking to the people on the ground, right? Talking to the students. If I was going to do a mission trip to a country that I've never been to, first thing I'd want to do is talk to the locals. And I remember even during my job interview to work here, um, the previous chaplain asked me a question of like, what ministry are you going to bring to the table? What kind of things do you have planned if we hire you? And I just told her like, I can't answer that because it's like I don't know the people yet. And I was like, I'm not going to tell you that my whole plan is to do a men's ministry if I get there and all our members are mostly female. So I said, this is my plan, to get there, to get to know the people, understand their needs, and see how what skill sets I can bring, along with resources to meet those needs. And then, to answer the question, I was like, here's some things that I've had previous experience in. If you want to know, trust that I can do that on the fly. But I think a lot of churches need to come into it with an open mind and talk to the students, see where they're at, because every campus is different. Some of the needs where I went to school were not the needs that we have down here. So really trying to plug into that, listening to the students and empowering them to share the gospel. I could go on with a bunch of examples of how I've done work with churches before. You can do simple stuff like, for example, at UT. We have a really, really big fan base for football, right? We have about like 100,000 people that can fit in our football stadium, and they shut down like every road to the city leading to the campus
Wow.
the day of. So everyone's walking in, and you'll just see thousands of people just walk by. Like that's a perfect time to hand out literature, or hand out globe tracts, or just waters and talk to people. School that I went to, our football team was not that great, and nobody went to the games. We didn't even have a stadium on campus, so very different culture. But yeah, especially there's definitely seasonal stuff you can do, like when freshmen are moving into campus. Some campuses are really good with students and have tons of volunteers to move them into the dorms. Others don't, and you can volunteer to like help. If you have a club on campus, that club can sign up and help freshmen move into their dorm and talk with parents and have that first meet and greet when students are moving in. And everybody's looking for a friend when they're moving in as a freshman. So there's definitely some points of exposure that you can have and have positive influences. But to get the maximum effect, I definitely talk to the students because they know those opportunities and they know their campus.
That's good.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay.
Listen. Well, I think we I want to kind of roll back a little bit in terms of the of this question. I think we kind of jumped ahead of it, thinking that maybe the answer may have already been given. But what are some of the things you are hearing from parents when it comes to they're sending their kids to these campuses, whether it's Adventist campus or it is to a public campus? I have a son who I'm very protective of. Most Adventist parents are very protective. But what are some of the things as a parent are you hearing from parents when it comes to
Mm.
sending their kids off to the campuses?
Yeah, and if we could, just because I think that parents have this dilemma. If I'm sending my child to an Adventist school or Christian school, what's my expectations? And then some of them are because they're expecting that there's some sort of a campus ministry there. But if we could kind of address this question in the context of this is a secular campus where there is no
Right.
Adventist or ministry versus one where there is. What are they looking for? What's the difference? What's going to make the difference? So if they're saying, I'm not going to send my kid to a church school, to an Adventist school, why should they look for one where there is an Adventist campus ministry there? And maybe let's start with Don on that one, and then anybody else who wants to take a stab at that.
Yeah, it's, expectations are a hard thing to fill, especially if they're unrealistic. But one of the things that parents, and I know I went through this with my kids, whether you send them to an Adventist school or a non-Adventist school, you kind of, at that point, there comes kind of a reckoning, so to speak, of what you put in already.
Oh,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
So, there are those parents, when you start looking at what are their expectations, is the expectation of whom would be my first question. Is it the college, university? Well, you can expect a good education. And if it's an Adventist university, you could expect, hopefully, a Christ-centered education. But you have to understand that students will find whatever they look for on whatever campus they go to.
Yeah.
And they can find it.
They'll look
No
for
matter
it
what
and they'll
campus
find
they
it.
go to, they can find it. And
That's
so
real.
if it's your student, you can expect what you've built into them to come to fruition during college.
Wow.
So if you've built into them grace and a relationship with Jesus, you'll probably see additional growth during college, no matter whether they're Adventist or. Oh man, I'm preaching now. All right.
I
That's
can't.
right.
Come on.
You got that
That was
Hammond
my
going, man.
surprise. Sorry, I wasn't ready for the organ, but I'm ready next time. Is that a B3?
Yeah. I know where you've been,
All
Don.
right. Yeah, I'm going there now. But if you've built in the rules of the church and the expectations of the church without a love for Jesus, they're going to leave during this time.
Yep.
Wow.
Find other things or experiment to see what else is going on, no matter whether they go to an Adventist university or not.
Yeah.
And unless someone helps them during this time find that relationship with Jesus, what happens is one of those two things typically takes place.
Okay.
Now, what happens prior to this time is many parents now try to build the road for their kids instead of preparing their kids for the road.
Okay.
And that will preach right there. But
Yes.
sorry.
Okay,
No,
I'm
that's
sorry.
good stuff.
I missed the
Listen.
cue. There we go. All right.
Pastor Paul, you just may have to keep. You may just have to continue playing that thing because he's dropping some nuggets right here, man. I mean, this is.
Yes.
Go ahead, brother. Yes, sir.
So what happens is we often then try to transfer our expectations onto the school or onto the campus ministries at an Adventist university or onto the college professors when we haven't really prepared
My Lord.
them ourselves. We basically are shoving them at the university saying, well, I'll pay the dollars for the Adventist education and hope it saves them.
Fix my kid.
Wow.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
But
What I will say is that Adventist education allows you more opportunities
okay.
to accept Christ, but it also allows them more opportunities to reject Christ.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
I concur.
Come on.
Wow.
But
So if they
that's-
get the set of the sail going the wrong direction, it simply can throw that back down, and where they say, well, I'm not going that way and you can't make me. And so the resistance becomes stronger oftentimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, then you say, well, what should my expectations be of the churches that might be next around them? And I would say, as I said earlier, you should have no expectations. That way, if something happens, you can be pleasantly surprised, but you won't be very disappointed.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Trying to keep it
Mercy.
real, guys.
That's sound. That's
I
logical.
know.
Please.
Yeah, we keep it real. But I mean, aren't there some expectations that parents should have when they send their kids to the Adventist school? I mean, there's at least something we should have. Come on, help me. There got to be something.
I'll help you there. No, I believe there are some expectations. I just want to lay the groundwork to say, first of all, understand that when you look at expectations, make sure your expectations are realistic, because they're going to come to fruition one way or the other.
Right.
Now, having said that, I know that many kids in Adventist education they come to the first freshman and sophomore year, they're pushing back pretty hard because they found a newfound freedom. Mm-hmm. Somewhere along the end of the sophomore year, of course, sophomore, the actual word means wise fool. And that's what a lot of them play during their sophomore year in college. But somewhere along the end of that, they begin to get serious about life and about where they're going, and suddenly things begin to click as they say, "Wait a minute, I'm now responsible for how I turn out."
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's where you begin to present that. What are you going to do with this man, Jesus Christ?
Okay.
And that's where that begins to take place. So the junior, senior year, many times they'll begin to re-engage if they're on an Adventist university campus. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do with Adventist Christian Fellowship, the different chapters, is help them re-engage even on a public university campus, so that they're not out there with nothing to help them re-engage spiritually. Okay. So I think the realistic expectation would be to say, the Adventist education, I can give you some hope. There's a lot higher chance of them staying in the church and consistently beginning to serve the church if they go to Adventist education than there is outside. However, we're finding that some of our students on public university campuses actually have a stronger spiritual experience in college because they're having to defend their faith more often.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
I've got some friends that have gone through that kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, I was just, I'm on the camera. Mercy. I was just saying I've had some friends that have gone through that. You know, when I graduated, I went to Oakwood, and I had friends that graduated, and a bunch of them ended up at Stony Brook in New York. And, you know, they kept doing their thing. You know, when we got to Oakwood, I won't say what we did there, those of us who did what we did when we were doing it. But there were those, you know, they went to Stony Brook, man, and they basically took over the university's gospel choir.
Wow.
You know, and out of that experience, they would, you know, because they're gospel choir, they would have worship before, they would have devotion, and they would fellowship. And by the time they graduated, they had baptized into Adventism a decent amount of the gospel choir at a public university. And, you know, because they was like Don said, there was pushback. They were challenged, and they had to decide whether or not to hold on to what they knew, or even to go deeper based on what other people told them. You know, they have to even look at scripture differently to some degree as well. So I think, I don't want to move past what Don is saying, because what he's saying is absolutely important. Yeah. Whatever you look for is what you're going to get, public or private. And on my side of the equation in the Adventist school, which Don, I think you can testify to this too, sometimes because we assume that the Adventist institution is going to, you know, foot the spiritual bill. We don't. I don't know how to do this. Like, we just assume that everyone who's coming is spiritual, so we don't necessarily invest as much as we should into that spiritual paradigm, if that makes sense. You know, and so, I mean, when I got to Oakwood, you know, before the pandemic, man, there might have been 20 to 30% of the campus that actually went to church on Sabbath. You know, maybe. I think I'm being very, very generous. You know, it was a legit concern. And then you would think, well, maybe they're going to the churches around town. They're not. They're sleeping. And then, man, I hope I'm not digressing, because I feel like I got to say this too. Because again, what Don said is important. If they're not prepared before they get to college, it doesn't matter what you put in front of them. So when students come to my office, the biggest challenge I'm having with them is they don't even know what they're doing there. They don't know the Father. They say they believe in the Messiah, but they don't know the Father. They have no idea who they are. They've got no purpose, but they've declared a major. And I'm like, I'm not sure how that doesn't end in mental health issues. It doesn't
Wow.
it doesn't make any sense. And I challenge them. So when they come to me, I bring them all the way back to the beginning. And I say, well, listen, what are you doing here? And maybe I'll get in trouble for this. I'm probably the lone person on Oakwood's campus that will tell a student you don't belong here. Like, I don't have a problem doing
Wow.
that. It's more important to be where you're supposed to be,
Mm.
because then you can get what you're supposed to get, rather than just saying, well, if I go to Adventist school, it'll help my spirituality. When, speaking from experience, not necessarily. There are more excuses to rebel. You finally getting that taste
Mm.
of church is now my choice, and
Mm.
Yeah.
and then on the flip side, let me say this too, because I think you asked the question about the churches. I
Hmm.
think that one of the things that is a disappointment in Adventism is you really shouldn't need a reason to do campus ministry, because if you're an Adventist, you're all part of the same family. And I think this is something we don't do a good job of instilling from the top or bottom up, down, top down, is every Adventist church should look at every Adventist young person, no matter where they come from, conference, church type, as one of their own children.
That's right.
And if their parents didn't give it to them before they got here, you should
Hmm.
be stepping in and saying, well, we'll give it to them when they get here. If their parents didn't give them the foundation, then maybe we'll step in and try to give them a foundation. It shouldn't even be about, I think the problem is our paradigm, whether you're in the institution, or, I mean, in the educational institution or the church institution, our paradigm is all about numbers and, how
Hmm.
things look, rather than the people.
Yep.
And again,
Yep.
so when a student comes to my class, I
Ouch.
mean, into my class or into my office, I don't care what your ID number is. I don't care what conference you're from. I want to know, do you know the Father? If you
Hmm.
believe in the Messiah, what extent does that go to? Do you have a purpose? What's your identity? And let's start there. And once we get you grounded, then we can start talking about where to go. Then we can start talking about the Bible. Otherwise,
Hmm.
Yeah.
everything else is just an exercise of futility, if you ask me. But I'm done.
I
Mm.
think you're right on, but see, I think we're short sighted in the local churches oftentimes, because we see it as what can they do for us rather than what can we
Right.
do for the church at large. You've got
Hmm.
to see it as almost Ellen White, back around 1901, 1902, told GC, don't send out more missionaries right now, because we have so many immigrants coming to our shores. We need to win them, send them out to win their families and those back home.
Mm.
And so what we do, we need to understand that those college students that God sends to our churches, he's entrusting us to disciple them so they can then go out and disciple others. We can't
Mm.
just look at them as they're just more mouths to feed at the potluck, and they're always hungry. And
Mm.
so I don't know what we get out of them. We don't get anything out of them. They just eat our food and leave.
Wow.
So we've got to be
Mm.
less short-sighted about things, and look at the long
Come
game
on.
to say,
Hmm.
how can we build disciples long term for Jesus Christ, even if it doesn't benefit our local
Mm.
church right now.
Come on.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Wait, can I add this to
Yep.
what Don is saying? As you're talking, I'm thinking, man, when I was at Oakwood on this Adventist, campus, and even after I, eventually switched my major to theology, the greatest spiritual influence in my life as a college student in Huntsville,
Hmm.
Alabama, was at Madison Mission. It wasn't even on campus. It
Mm.
wasn't AY, it
Mm.
wasn't chapel, it wasn't dorm worship, like it wasn't the events that the chaplains put on. Literally, my spiritual sustenance came, by the hands of like a pastor doggett who made it his life's mission to basically reach the college campus. So again, I think we take, not to beat the horse, but we take for granted, man. We just take the wrong things for granted. And I don't think we're intentional enough about just our approach. We gotta be more intentional.
Yeah, I want to throw in this comment or question really from one of our viewers today, Doreen. Hi, Doreen. She says, should there be closer collaboration among? And it's so long, that's why I can't put it up on the screen. I don't think it's going to fit.
Hmm.
Um, should there be closer collaboration among our Adventist institutions? For example, each SDA institution funding those majors currently absent in a particular institution. That's that. What was that thing, Don? You mentioned some sort of a
nuclear reaction.
Yeah, something.
Nuclear
Yeah.
reaction.
Makes sense. The visiting professor concept might also be something we could look at. To this day, it breaks my heart that my daughter had to transfer from Oakwood University to the University of Huntsville to complete her BSc simply because Oakwood didn't have her major. Thank God she did just fine with her undergraduate and graduate degrees at UH. Our universities have to get creative. And then she says, "Great show today, PRT and guest." All right, and I know that you guys aren't in control of the academic program and what they offer, but is there anything that you'd like to respond to in that question
Right.
or that statement?
Well, I can respond a little bit. I sit on North American Division Young Adult Committee as well as North American Division ACF Committee, or Public Campus Ministry, PCM. One of the things that Adventist institutions are currently gearing up to do are offer a whole lot of certificate programs.
Okay.
So that those students that don't want to pursue a 4-year degree can get certificates in welding, for example, in auto mechanics, those kind of things, so that they are beginning to take back some of those things that we've just let go through the years. And I think there's going to be a plumbing certificate, those kind of things that we've just let go totally. And they're beginning to look at how we do certification programs, so that it's a 1-year program, for example, that gets them a certificate that gets them into the workforce. So that's on one side of things that we haven't had anything to do. And any kid who wanted to do those kind of programs had to go to a public university or a technical college or community.
Don, I appreciate you sharing that, but I'd like you to take something back to that committee from PRT. If you don't have to tell me from PRT, but from wherever. 15 years ago, I was taken to visit a school in Texas where at the secondary level, they were providing everything that you just talked through. 15 years ago. The certificate in welding, the certificate in being able to get your CNA license. They were doing that not at the tertiary level, not at the college level.
Right.
The public system, the secular system, they've been doing that stuff for decades at the secondary system, at secondary level. And so I would love for you to go back to that committee and say, hey, we've been talking about this at tertiary level, but many of our parents in our communities know that their kids can get this stuff well before they get to tertiary level, college level. So can we focus some of this conversation at our high schools, at our secondary level, and even at our middle school level? Some things they're being introduced to then. Because we hate at this level feeling like we're the tail and not the head.
Sure.
It always feels,
And here's the sad part about that, and I'm going to show my age at this point, but 40, 50 years ago, most of our academies, thumbs up that, Anselm.
Most
of our academies.
I know where you're going, yeah.
I thought you were talking about me being old.
No.
I'm watching you, buddy.
I see you.
Hey, we're watching him too.
I'll start the story soon. No.
Friends like
but
these.
Most of our academies had those kind of programs.
Yes.
We had the welding, we had the technical programs. We did home ec. All those things kind of dropped off as we got into a technological advances and so forth. And so I think there's some discussion now about bringing those back into our academies.
Awesome.
And I think we need to. But yeah, I think that I don't know that it needs to be an either or. It probably needs to be a both and.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those students haven't decided what they want to do, and they don't take those classes in high school, and suddenly get to college going, wow, this is more than I thought it was going to be. What do I do now? I think I really just want to work on cars. Well, I can't go back to high school to learn that. So if we've got something in place that they can do that, I think that's,
Yeah, love it.
So we're developing those kind of things. I think the church is, and I'm not responsible for those. I'm not the education side, just so people know. I just happen to hear that in the committee. Passed it on here.
Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, we are going to ask our guests to stay put for just a second. We're going to take a quick little break, and we're going to bring you guys right back. Listen, if you are just joining us today at the Pastors Roundtable, if you've just tuned in, talk to us, Dr. Henry. What have they missed? Tell them a little bit what they...
Listen, let me tell you something. Pastor Wade, when we talked about this show, Pastor Paul, I mean, we talked about this vital ministry for the youth, on-campus ministry. As I'm going through this conversation, man, I agree with that on the chat. Somebody put on the chat, this is a conversation needs to be had in the schools and the churches and all, because we're talking about how can the church and the campuses that they are involved with and in the vicinity with, how can they get involved and do ministry together? What can we do to prepare our young people as they go to school? Listen, we got some nuggets today. Look, we got to prepare them, right? And how do we prepare them? What can the expectations that we have on these schools? We have to make it realistic. Are we expecting these schools to train our children so that they could accept Christ? What are we doing at home? Look, this conversation is vital. By the way, we always talk about part 2, and I think by the end of this program, we'll talk about part 2. But look, this conversation, I'm serious, y'all. This conversation, we really need to have it probably July too. This is a good time to have it now, but July. And that time when people are really, going to be engaged on, okay, I'm going to go to this school or not. I know they're doing it now, when they finish and they graduate from high school. But, that July push, August push, okay, you already said you're going to do it. So this is what you need to expect when you go there. And here's how you make a difference. Powerful program.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was I wanted to say this when the comment was made about why are you on the campus? I think Pastor Douglas was bringing that point out very clearly. While I was on campus, I met a lot of kids who were like, I'm only here because my parent made me come here, or I came here because
Mama made me do it.
I'm trying to get in. Yeah, I'm called to ministry, things like that. So many of our young adults or young people don't know why they are doing what they're doing. And so when you get to a campus, the campus ministry don't know how to really help you because you don't know what you're coming into. And I thought that was an interesting comment being made, that because they don't know, campus ministry is kind of like a catch-all. And sometimes they hit and miss some of our kids, and then dealing with the expectations. Man, that's some real stuff there that we were talking about.
Yeah, well, listen, fellas, if they missed it, we can't repeat it all right now, but if you missed
that's
it,
true.
All you got to do is do what? You need to go back and go to the Pastors Roundtable, not just YouTube channel or Facebook page, or what else, Roger? We've got one other resource for them.
You can go to the website,
go to the website.
Live.
PRT.live.
You can get not just this episode, but every episode that we have done is there. But you do want to share it. You do want to subscribe. You do want to like it, because when you do those things, you do not miss what's coming up next.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. And listen, when you go to the PRT.live, you're going to see all of those past shows that you can go from season 1 all the way to season 7. You will see some of our alumni, like the illustrious Dr. Leslie Pollard, who's in our chat right now. I see he's just put some stuff up. That's the president of our institution at Oakwood University. But you will be able to go and explore some fascinating conversations that we have had in the past. But you will also find a way to be able to support financially the Pastors Roundtable. We've been at this now for 7 seasons, and the more seasons that come, the more expensive this gets. And then we depend on your support and we depend on your help. So we want you to go ahead and find a way there. You see in the chat, Pastors Roundtable, PRT.live is there. If you find it that you appreciate and you enjoy what you've been hearing week after week, season after season, we want you to be able to go and show some support so that we can keep doing this, so that we can keep going on. We appreciate those of you who have, and many of you have shown some support, and you have put some finances to help give us the resources to keep the Pastors Roundtable relevant, resource, and real. And we thank you so much for that. But we need you to keep on giving and keep on sharing. So thank you so much for that. Dr. Henry, we're getting ready to get back to our guest right now. There's one one more thing. You talked about it at the top. Is it too late? Or can they still do what you asked them to do?
They can share it right now, man. Look, and watch this. There's some questions in the chat that I know that if you share this feed to, I think other people are going to chime in and also ask some questions, follow-up questions to what's in the chat right now. And you can only do it when you're live, right? I mean, as we're talking about it, right? I mean, so again, share, and this is a great episode. You got to watch it. It's going to be powerful. And let's go back.
Wait a minute, Doc. I got to clarify one thing. If you are watching this on the replay, it's not too late for you to share.
Okay. All right. Yes.
If you're watching this on the replay, you can still copy that link and send it to a friend, a family member, a pastor, an educator, a school administrator. You can still do that because this is rich information. An educational superintendent in your conference, a principal in your school, your education director at your local church. These are all, we've heard some gems today and Dr. Pollard talked about. He talked about this idea about this. I'm going to put it up on the screen, and we got to get back to our guest because time is getting away from us. He's watching from the UK tonight. That's the wrong one. I wanted to hit this one. This triangle of modern discipleship for young adults in college settings requires school, home, and church. We talked about this. Our guest talked about this. Then this being a fertile discussion. This is something that, again, you may think, well, I'm just part of the church. This doesn't relate to me. No, it does. And that's some of the good things that we're learning in this discussion today. Thank you again. We want you to share. You guys ready to bring our guest back?
Let's roll on back.
All right.
Let's bring it back. Yes. Woo! Man, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. So, I know we have some questions there, Pastor Wade. I just want to ask this question. I see some stuff in the chat. I definitely want to make sure we get to some of the stuff in the chat. And just a quick thing about certificate programs. Mr. Mitri is saying, why don't we have certificate programs for teens that have special needs? The teen can be academically smart, but need to go at a slower pace. Maybe Keel, if you could just respond to that real quick.
Again, I'm not on the education side of things. I'm on the young adult ministry side of things. So I think that's true. I think we should, but I have no power to do anything about that. Dr. Pollard would be a lot better in position to do something than I. So.
We need to get Dr. Pollard on the show.
Gotcha.
All right.
So listen, I want us to switch just a little bit. We have three strong leaders in campus ministry, but there's a unique ministry that's happening at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. And Chris, I want you to share a little bit. You have a house on the public campus.
Yes. What?
And you're doing full ministry on a public campus, an Adventist ministry on a public. Share with us a little bit of the history, what came about, what's happening. What are you doing on that public campus?
Absolutely. Before I jump right into that, it is on my heart, the last question that was asked. So I want to just touch a little bit on that real quick. For those that know me well know that I'm dyslexic, severely dyslexic. So in the 5th grade, I couldn't read or write at all. And I had a substitute teacher assigned to me to do all my work and to dictate, which did not make me popular in school. But through God's grace and parents that fought really hard for me to get the education I deserved, I was able to go to college and double majored with a minor. And having those resources at my public university, and I know Adventist schools have resources as well for people that have different learning disabilities or cognitive abilities. But if somebody needs to take a path that's not strictly college, like if they need to go into a program, a welding program, or go into a trade, if that trade school is near a college, ACF is not just for one campus. I have students from that go to Pellissippi, that go to a community college, that will come and fellowship with us, that will be active in the group. We've had student leaders here who have gone to different programs outside of UT. So, sometimes it's hard for us to quickly make those programs on our campuses or on our Adventist schools, but we can still try to bring the gospel to where they need to be. And I think if you have somebody in those settings, don't be afraid to connect them with an ACF chapter, because students supporting students is, especially with the lens of sharing the gospel, is something that we are equipped to do. So that said, going into shifting gears to answer your question about Advent House, yeah, there's a lot of history. We got the house is built about 99 years ago, 1923. So 1924 rather. So it's an old building, but the history of how we got it and how it became a student center for our church was there's a wonderful family, the Duckets, at our local church that bought this house in 1980. And they saw the vision where no one else saw it. And they were like, there are people on this campus that need Christ, and we want to make that happen. So they bought the house and they donated it to the church. And the church had several chaplains come in. Ron Backel was one of the early ones who really turned this place into what it is today. And they started using it as a house to house students, but also to run Bible studies, to do activities. It's kind of like a Christian fraternity. Instead of throwing cake parties, we were doing evangelistic efforts. And, you know, one of my favorite Martin Luther King Jr. quote is, those that love peace must be as organized as those that love war. And, you know, there's people out there who are, you know, trying to not share the gospel and are very organized at doing it. And we need to be just as organized ourselves. So our house, you know, you can see where I am right now. Don, shout out to him, helped me make this wall behind me. But we turned our basement into a little movie theater where we can bring people in to show Christian films like The Case for Christ or Prince of Egypt. And that's a great way for students to not only start spiritual conversations amongst themselves, but to also invite their secular friends in and kind of have those conversations for the first time. So having a physical facility, you don't absolutely need it for ACF. You can use classrooms and other facilities on campus. But having your own space just opens the door for so many wonderful opportunities.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Good stuff. I see these questions on the chat. I don't know if we could go to one quickly. Pastor Wade, I don't know if you had a follow up to that. It seemed like you were going to say something.
Well, I was from the Advent House, which is a Georgia Cumberland ministry there. We have Don, who shared earlier that he has, is it 60 campuses that you're doing ACF on?
No,
I gave
15.
you too much.
15.
Yeah,
you gave me way too much. I would die. 15.
15. And when we talked last night, you were sharing that your most southern campus is Valdosta. So you have a
most
large
northern campus between... Tennessee State University is up at the Virginia line, and Valdosta State's at the Florida line. So I've got the whole state of Georgia and eastern Tennessee.
Wow. So share with us a little bit about this ACF concept. It is the public campus ministry of the Seventh-day Adventist Church on public campuses. What exactly is it? Is it just a club thing, or what do I gain from being a part of ACF?
I'll jump on that, and then Chris can follow up on this. But let me clarify, first of all, public campus ministry is an umbrella that the General Conference has, NAD and all those, and it's often called PCM because we like to shorten everything.
Okay.
We get so many little acronyms going on, we can't remember what they all are. But PCM is that acronym, and then you have ACF. And people say, what's the difference between PCM, ACF? PCM, Public Campus Ministry, is the umbrella under which Adventist Christian Fellowship operates. PCM is a worldwide thing. All the public universities around the world are operating in the Public Campus Ministry umbrella. In North America, we cannot, as a church, function openly on a public university campus because of the separation of church and state and so forth. But students can. So Adventist Christian Fellowship is actually our student organization that allows us to function on campus and allows our students to have fellowship on campus. And that's under the PCM umbrella. So ACF is under PCM, but Adventist Christian Fellowship are chapters, and we have a nationwide charter and so forth through the North American division. And so we have probably, I think, 65, 70 different chapters around the U.S. right now. We happen to have 15 in Georgia Cumberland. And so that Adventist Christian Fellowship is that club. It's that organization that allows us to function on public university campuses.
That's good. If I may, I'd like to kind of reach back, Chris, into to something that you were talking about earlier. Um,
Sure.
what you have seen on public university campuses, we talked. I've heard you talk about some of the ways that you have seen churches do ministry or reach out, and you gave some details. So what Don just said is that as a church, we are not so much allowed to do ministry on campus. But you said that you've seen some things. Can you talk a little bit about um, the borders, or the, how that, because we've got a lot of people who are in areas right now who there is no Adventist school, but they do have a school, and they know that there's young people there, and they want to say, oh, how do we reach them? What are some of the ways that you've seen that have worked well, and some of the ways that you saw that maybe didn't turn out so great?
Yeah. So there's so much to say on that. So I'm really glad you asked. I will say, so just like ACF is because it's important to understand the history and understand like the dynamics. So ACF, just like any school would have like a chess club or a swim club or maybe a public health club for academics. A group of students can come together and make a club on whatever they want. And a lot of these clubs have started from students, Adventists, coming to secular campuses because, of finances or the major that they want or whatnot. And they're like, I want to share the gospel, not just with my friends, but I want to bring the church with me. And they, on their own, set this up. And that is, they set up through the university and get it registered, which is an amazing thing that they do. When I was a student, a lot of them came up with different names. Like we called ourselves, when I was a student at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, we called ourselves ACTS, Adventist Christian Fellowship, Adventist Christians Together to Serve. And the problem with that is like all these groups had different names. So if you transferred schools, kind of good luck finding the next, the same type of group. So the NAD came up with ACF so that we could be one unit, collaborate with each other, find each other, and be more connected to the church. That concept, though, of being a club and having privileges on campus, you can do events. Like our club can do events on campus and get outside speakers to come in, where we can reserve rooms and have certain stuff that, a pastor can't do that on his own, but he can partner with the group and do certain things. Now, I'm hesitant to say that because, I'm sure someone in their mind could be like, I'm going to have my student reserve a room and we're going to do a Revelation study.
Seminar.
And and it's, honestly, that might not be the first launching point that you want to do. I'm not saying it can't be done, but that might not be the first point. You really have to find what is the goal of the students. What is it that they want to do? Even as a campus minister myself on this campus, I still always want to make sure that I am empowering my students to do the things that God has placed on their hearts and letting them set the mission statement. Our mission statement for our group is belong, believe, become. So we want to create a place where all people can belong, create an atmosphere where people can believe in an unbelievably loving God, and then help them and empower them to become a messenger of that love to others.
Hey,
So,
wait, Chris. I got to give you that. And people don't realize this, but yeah. So
yeah.
We play that
I played that because I want you to pay attention to the intentionality of the order of those words. Repeat it one more time for me, Chris. Say it one more time.
Belong, believe, become.
Y'all know we ain't used to that. Y'all know that's not who we are. Belong, believe, become.
And I'll say oftentimes churches come in and they'll take the people who already believe, and instead of helping them become messengers, they'll want to make them a place where they can belong in the local church. They'll make them into like pew warmers. And we don't want to progress people backwards. We still want them to have a place, but create a place where they can bring their friends and teach them how to witness to their friends. And the thing I love about that mission statement is you'll have some people that come in and they're already a messenger. Continue to empower them to be that. You'll have some people that come in and they're just looking for a place to belong and they never leave that stage. And that's okay because like campus is hard. There's a lot of loneliness on campus. There's a lot of need for community. And I've had students who are non-Adventist who just came to our social events, never came to our Bible studies, but you could tell that they walked away knowing that Adventists are people that care, and that Adventist communities
Yeah.
are safe places for them. And if that's the only thing I get to teach one set of students, then that's
Hmm.
an amazing thing in and of itself. So when you have a mission statement like that, or the students are that passionate about doing things, as a local church, when you want to partner with them, you have to think about what are we bringing to the table to help them with their mission. And there's a lot of creative ways to do that.
Good stuff. Good
I,
stuff.
I,
Good
I
stuff.
I like that. I like that. That mission there is powerful. I'm looking at the chat, and I'm just thinking about the campus ministries, the young adults doing great things there. But in the chat, good question from Dr. Pollard. What do we do? How do we prepare our young people, our young adults, for reentry to the local church? Right, because it's
Yeah,
different. So you get them for a time, but it's to
yeah,
send out. How do you
Yeah.
prepare them? How do you, Pastor
yeah,
Douglas, if you could share that, and then coming to Pastor, I guess everyone can take a little piece of. But Douglas, how you prepare them? How you prepare them to reentry? I mean, the local church
Yeah.
is not like what they're used to at the college
Yeah,
campus.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I can't give you a solid. Here's what you do. I can tell what we do on Oakwood campus is our students do everything, man. I said it last night at AY at our Vespers. We let our students do everything. You can
Hmm.
start whatever ministry you want, whatever small group you want,
Ouch.
and we let them run. I mean, I'm their
Ouch.
resource. I fill out the requisitions so they can get checks and get stuff taken care of, but I do not plan the
Ouch.
programs. I don't speak unless they absolutely ask you to. I don't go out of my way. Again, as a chaplain, I'm not their pastor per se. I'm there to journey with them. So, so that when they, just like a parent, when they scrape their knee, I help them up and say, well, next time when you turn the corner, don't go so fast, but I'm not there to tell them, don't ride the bike or ride this bike. I'm there the journey. And so
mm,
when you do that, you kind of allow them to grow into that, into that leadership position.
Okay.
And then what I'll say on top of that too is from our side, that's the most we can do. But I do think on the other side, we have to be open to what reentry means. And
Okay.
I'll give you an example. When I was in Kansas City, and I think Pastor Henry was there at the same time. Our churches in Kansas City, no, we would love nothing more for the young adults to graduate Oakwood or graduate wherever, come back to town,
Come back.
take over the praise team, take over the church and do their thing. The reality is some of them they just can't do that. And so I think we got to be open also to allow them to do what they want, not do what they want. Why not plant a church? Why not get them to start
Yeah,
something
there
new?
you go.
Why not let them take all the
mm,
ideas that have been bubbling in their head that maybe they can only do halfway on
yeah,
campus and let them just go do something, and don't. So I feel like maybe we ought to you know, visit what it means to re-enter the church. Because
Mm.
again,
Okay.
as society goes to school, man. So these students go in as freshmen, they come out with ideas that are not, that are
mm,
not even being addressed in church. And they're
Mm.
they're
Hmm.
they're
Yeah.
developing opinions that the church isn't even addressing. So to ask them to just go back in, I think is unfair. But I do think what we do, at least, the most we can, is we prepare them to be leaders in the church. But again, that's part of the problem. The church has to be willing to accept them as leaders and not just as viewers, attendees, and tithe payers. So
Yeah, that's
You
good.
have that tide
Yeah.
payers in there, man.
Can I
Tide.
add
I can,
something to this? I know I'm not a guest on this show
Oh,
right now, but I just that question, it irks because there's some, we take students, and as Kory just mentioned, we have students on our campuses that manage budgets larger than many of our local
mm,
churches
yeah,
manage. And yet, when they come out of school and come back to church, we have to wait until they're 55 years old before we
preach.
elect them to be any officer in the church or have
My
any
Lord,
say
my
so or
Lord.
sit on a church board. And we've created this, what I think Dr. Pollard was talking about, what almost an unrealistic scenario or setting in school that they're going to face when they come out. And I'm not saying it's the church, it's the school's fault. at some of our churches with some of us, Pastor Henry and Pastor, these are some of the things that we have to be cognizant of
Yeah.
when we
Mhm.
deal with our church members. And those of you that are out there, come on, y'all, we got to cut that out. We got to stop that stuff.
Right.
You got kids coming out of
Right.
school who their personal budget is larger than some
Right.
of they land jobs where their personal budget is larger than some of our entire church budgets that are out there.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
and they're leading more people on their jobs than we have in our pews on
Come on
Sabbath
now.
mornings. So
Yeah.
we've got to
Right.
stop saying because they're so young and this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And we've got to take. I'm sorry. I just want to be. Y'all got to
Hey,
invite me
listen.
as a guest to be on the show.
Hey,
one of these days.
right. This is the heart of the pastor.
What you're saying is spot on,
Chris.
man. And
Yeah.
one of the things I appreciate about Adventism, and I said this to a student last night as we argued about some worship points. Adventist is one of those denominations I think is special because we run the gamut. Like you can get any kind of experience from church to church. No Adventist church is made the same. That's just what it is. All right. Because I had a student ask me last night, well, when you were growing, were they playing music like that? And I was like, no, but there was definitely an Adventist church down the block that was playing music like that. And I think, to your point, we should be willing to plug them in based on their gifting, based on the education they just paid for. And should it happen that maybe, it's a little bit too confrontational or it's too difficult, again, church has got to be open to say, well, why can't we start another worship service? Why can't we start another campus? Like, why can't we resource them? You know what I'm saying? So that they can affect parts of the city that, not that we can't reach, but we're not even trying to reach. They can reach that part of the city. These are their contemporaries. They have influence in boardrooms that, we'll never set foot in. And so what can we do to resource them rather than, again, just expecting something from them? And I think that's a more fair way of looking at it.
I think Chris wanted to jump in and say something.
Yeah.
I saw you, Chris. You were ready, man. Go ahead, Chris.
No, that question is such a good question because it touches to the heart of my testimony of how I ended up in campus ministry and doing God's work. My campus ministry, which is like very many, the one that I was a student in, we actually ran church services on our campus 3 times a month. The local church was like 2 towns over. It was a 30-plus minute drive, which the Adventist students were willing to do. But it was hard for them to bring their friends with them. So back in 2001, they started doing church on campus. I think they called it Saturday Morning Live at the time. And they'd invite their friends and just all the students led out the service. They'd sometimes have local pastors, like some of the conference leaders come in and do the sermons. But a lot of times the students had to do the sermons. And the unique thing about ACF is that we are trying to graduate or get rid of a fourth of our members every year, which is, other ministries it blows my mind that we're able to stay stable doing that. But we want them to graduate. We want them to go. But because of that, there's constantly a need for leadership and growth. So when we were doing the church services on campus, my first year, they were like, Chris, would you do the opening prayer? And I was like, of course. And they're like, hey, sophomore year, can you do the announcements and prayer before the offering? Because we would collect offering and give it to the local church treasurer. And as it goes on, by your senior year, everyone before you is gone. So they're looking at you like, you got to preach. And for me, I had public speaking classes in high school.
Yeah.
I actually was invited to be a guest speaker at Harvard and a bunch of different colleges as a high school student to talk about dyslexia. And so I had those skills, but nobody had ever asked me to preach. And I was like, preaching and public speaking are 2 different things. So I was like, I don't think I can do that. And, praise God for my student president at the time. She looked at me and said, hey, Chris, like, what do I need to do to get you to preach for the first time? I said, you can put me on the books, but as long as you let me cancel the day of, because I will. And she was like, that's good enough for me. And she just stepped out in faith and let me do that. And God just gave me the message. And I gave a wonderful sermon about being in the world, but not of the world. And after that, like when I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do after college, but God just steered me in the direction of doing ministry and called me into his mission field. And I think preparing our students to see their strengths and have those opportunities. I think a lot of times we're nervous, and rightfully so, to let somebody who's inexperienced take the pulpit. But if we don't give them those opportunities to grow, they're not going to rise to the occasion, and they will succeed our expectations. So ACF and I'm sure Oakwood does this as well, gives them those opportunities. And that's an amazing thing.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Go ahead, Don.
This is one of the things that we do poorly in the church is the handoff. The handoff we do between our academies and our colleges, and the handoff we do between our universities back to the local church. And it's not anyone's necessarily fault, but the thing is that we do so much on our Adventist University campuses for our students that are just unbelievable that they cannot find anything like that when they leave. And so part of the issue that we're going to have to deal with is how do we affect church culture change at the local church level that could embrace those students that have been trained. When I was at Academy Church, one of the things I did for the handoff going to Southern, for example, was I would do a spiritual resume on every student. Every time somebody would participate, we would track them. And when they graduated, I could send an entire list of things they had been participants of, or they had led out in, or been trained in, to the chaplain at Southern, the chaplain at Union or Oakwood, or whatever school they went to. I would send that letter saying, this person has been trained in these things. Please use them. Please continue their training. And we found that those students that got picked up at Southern and got picked up at Union or Andrews or wherever they went, continued that training. I also sent the exact same letter to their local church pastor at home. So if they decided to go back home, there was still that thing. We've got to get better at doing the handoff. Yeah. And we've got to get better at doing culture change, working with local churches to say, what is it that makes you student friendly? And I ask students today, what will you do to stay in the church? How far will you go in the church? Because you're going to be hurt. You're going to be upset. You're going to be people, at your school, at Southern, at Oakwood, there's a smorgasbord of activities you can be involved in. When you go to the local church, you go to the potluck, not only do they not set the 12-piece setting for you on the table, you got to take your own paper plate and and elbow your way into the table. So how far will you go to stay in the church? That's going to be your choice because you will be hurt. I have been. And you have to understand that you're actually following Jesus, not just the church.
Come on now.
And so where is it he's calling you to? And what will you do to stay in his will and his graces and continue to pursue your own spiritual walk? You got to take responsibility for it and move forward. So there's stuff that has to happen on both sides. I think that our delivery system from the colleges to our local churches needs to be improved and talked about. I think that our church culture needs to be worked on. I think maybe a church culture change specialist in each conference would work with the churches, at least close to those public universities, would say, hey, here's how we can do these things and so forth. I think there's a lot that could be done on that venue, but we instead continue to look at the numbers and wring our hands and say, well, we're just losing our young people. That's just too bad.
Ouch.
Wow.
Gentlemen, we are out of time today, but man, this has been rich. You had something else, Kory?
Yeah, man, I was actually typing. Are we going to get to any of the questions? Because I know the time is up. But what Don was saying leads perfectly, man. In terms of what churches can do and what the need is, why campus ministry is important. I feel it's important to say this. When we talk about culture change, again, when I challenge the students I interact with, I challenge them, and it's going to sound bad, but in short, I kind of challenge this institutional approach to doing things. There is no institution in the Bible. There is only family. And when we get away from that, we create gaps, and those gaps are where churches can fill in. I don't know how else to say that. Students need, and I work among a minority population. The young women on our campus need mothers, man. The young men, they need fathers, they need elders to show them how to live as men. They need people who, because college, this 4 years, it's so crazy how stuff is. This 4 years is the place where you're going to learn the most but you're probably going to be hurt the most. You're going to experience loss of life. Your grandparents will probably die while you're in college. And now post COVID, anyone can die while you're in college. So they need family. I don't know how else to put this. They don't need a church. They don't need an
Come
institutional
on,
approach.
my
They
Lord.
need people to just wrap their arms around them. My greatest experiences at Oakwood happened in people's houses that were just members in local churches that invited us over for lunch, that we met, and this person said, hey, come over here. And it turned into potlucks week after week, and then when I moved off campus, my house became the potluck spot, and it was just a safe place where students can say whatever, be whatever, and get support. And so for me as a chaplain, again, maybe it's going to sound weird. My intention on Oakwood's campus is not to baptize a student. It is to support them. It is to journey with them. It is when, and Father, help me not to give too much. It is when that young student makes that decision that leads to a pregnancy. Who supports them? Or when a young man, and I'm trying to tell y'all, man, when a young man is dating a girl for 3 years and then they break up, and then 2 weeks later she's, hanging with someone else, and he doesn't know how to deal with that. Who's going to be his big brother? These are the gaps that the church can fill, because there's only 3 of us on our campus. You guys are talking about 1 to 30,000, Chris. So I don't know how you do that, but it's 3 of us to about 1,500, and that's nothing. I cannot get to 1,400 students.
Kory,
the local church can be the family that these students need, because that's what we are. We're not just a church.
Amen.
We are a family.
Kory, it sounds to me like, as I listen to you talk, it sounds to me like you really want to come back to the Pastors Roundtable so that we can continue this.
Bring him back.
We've got to, because you are dipping your toes into some waters that we haven't really, but they're key. They are critical. And I think that's part of what, and that's what we're ascertaining. This is part of what Campus Ministries helps to provide, whether it is on an Adventist campus or not. And this is just something I think that we've got to dive deeper into, but we just don't have the time today.
Right.
Would you gentlemen be willing to come back and revisit some of this conversation so that we can get a little bit deeper in?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
All right, absolutely. Well, we look forward to that. But I know we've got some of us audience got to go. Some of us as hosts, we have some things that we've got to run to right now. But Pastor Wade, anything you wanna add as we wrap up and as we get ready to take us out today, or Dr. Henry? Yeah.
As we wrap up, I just want to say, man, what a conversation. I think, Kory, you kind of framed it. We are family. We really were talking about the church and how we connect, but you said it right. We are family, and it doesn't matter. I'm gonna throw a little mix up in the gumbo here. Whether we're from a regional conference or a state conference, it don't matter what conference you're from. If you are a church, you're part of the church. The kids on the campus don't care. And they just want to be part of a family. So we just give God praise. Don, we talked a little bit about that last night. It doesn't matter where the church is from. The family on the campus is most important.
Right. I want to say something real quick here before we end. Yeah, I want to say something real quick before we end. First of all, great program talking about the young adults. We thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to have to do a part 2. I do want to say something to our viewers as well. As we talk about young adults and doing ministry, we know that the suicide rates are going up. People are dying by suicide. So next week, when you go on the Pastors Roundtable, we're going to be talking about how to make our churches and schools aware of those who have suicidal ideation. And we're going to bring on people. We have one person that's coming on next week. He is a part of the Colombian Scale. So he's a part of that community. And so he's going to be on. We have a mental health therapist coming on. And so again, Pastors Roundtable, we deal with relevant issues. People are hurting. And I believe that at this program, there's some resources that can help as we go through life together. Thank you so much again for coming on our show.
We want to thank our viewers. One viewer, as you know, my mom, who always watches us from Trinidad. She texted me. She can't be on today, but she's going to watch us in the replay. She told me to tell everybody hello. And so I'm doing my due diligence and making sure that I do that so I don't get in trouble. But I just want to thank Kory, Don, Chris. You actually did a yeoman's job in sharing about ministering to our young adults on campuses. And we thank you for the time that you've shared with us. We look forward to part 2. We'll get a date together. Want to thank our viewers for joining us. We want to thank those who will be watching in the replay. We pray that this conversation doesn't just end today. The questions we didn't get to, you pull your group together wherever you are and continue the conversation on how we can minister to our young adults. How can we get them re-entry back into church life? How can we, you name it, we need your help with that and to partner with them. And thank you for partnering with Pastors Roundtable, where we strive to make ministry relevant,
resourced,
and real. God bless.
Thank you, everybody.